How many times have I told you when Republicans do something in one state, you see it popping up in another? That's what's happening in Louisiana, following what Ron DeSantis did in Florida by going after progressive district attorneys. That's what Louisiana Republicans are doing. Members of a Louisiana Senate committee have questioned Orleans Parish DA Jason Williams over the work of a civil rights division that Williams says helps restore trust in a long-troubled New Orleans justice system. Republican lawmakers criticized Williams over the motives and reasoning behind the moves by his office to back the release of many long-serving prisoners. Joining us now from New Orleans is DA Jason Williams. Glad to have you here. So I'm trying to understand what the problem is. So explain to us why Republicans are complaining about this office.
You know, I wish I could explain what was going on in their heads. New Orleans has been known for injustice for quite some time. That's not a new news story. And I'm simply trying to clean up our reputation as it relates to constitutionality and equal justice under the law for everyone, right? So the fact that we have worked really hard to bring crime down in the city of New Orleans, and we have faster than any other city in the country. And we're also reckoning with the sins of the past. And some octogenarians have come home, some for crimes they didn't commit, some for crimes where there was cheating within their trial. I don't understand why it seems like once we get one step forward, there needs to be 100 steps backwards. So I can't explain what Republicans are thinking.
So what exactly does the office do?
So I created a civil rights division to reckon with the sins of the past. We have been in the city of New Orleans an outlier for decades. We have been the prison capital of the world, the wrongful conviction capital of the world, the exoneration rate of the world, and we have had the highest crime rates at the same time during those particular decades. And this civil rights division is simply looking at cases to see if a police officer cheated, if a prior prosecutor cheated, to make sure people had a fair trial. And there's defense attorneys that have filed motions. Those motions are held in open court. We're simply allowing for there to be a place for review of these defective convictions.
So this sounds very similar to what the late Craig Watkins did in Dallas with his integrity unit that looked at old cases, that tested DNA, and there were people who were actually exonerated. Facts are facts. We know reality that previous DAs have cut corners and have put people in prison by withholding evidence, by not properly testing. Those things have actually happened. So what it sounds to me like you're saying is we want to make sure that we got it right. And if we got it wrong, then those folks should not be sitting in a prison and then they later sue the city or sue the state as a result of a wrongful prosecution.
You hit the nail right on the head. And, you know, I know Craig Watkins. I studied his work. We're using some of his playbook. I don't know how this became a partisan issue. If an innocent person is in jail, that means the person who actually committed the crime has been left in community. I would think R's and D's, black and white, old and young, I would think everybody could support that effort. Clearly, that's not the case.
Well, I'll tell you, because when you have these Republicans, their motive is very simple, to say that, and I'm sure they probably called you a Soros-backed DA. That's the language they use for any, non-conservative, hardcore, lock-em-up DA. This is what they do. This is how they complain. And they think that anybody is soft on crime if they are trying to, frankly, do right.
Yeah, fairness does not seem like that should be something that we would want to fight about. I've said it during the campaign. I've said it during my tenure. Criminal justice reform and public safety are not antithetical. In fact, they're two sides of the very same coin, and you cannot have one without the other, because I need people in community to come to court and testify when someone has committed a crime. But when they don't believe in me and they don't believe in this system, they choose not to participate, which means the bad guys get away. And so we've got to understand that if we make everything a partisan fight, we're never truly going to achieve what we want, which is a peaceful, safe place to live.
But this is also why I say these people are not really pro-life, because there have been individuals that have spent 20, 30, 40 years on death row. People who came close to death. I'm from Texas. I remember the Clarence Brantley case very well. That man came close 2 or 3 times being put to death. And he didn't commit the crime. And so I would think anybody would want to say, no, let's absolutely make positively sure that this individual did it. They just automatically assume, hey, never review it. And look, you've got the case in Missouri where the district attorney, Wesley Bell's office, has said there are issues with this here. And the judge has said, release this man. The Republicans in the state said, no, he got to stay in prison.
You know, I mean, the thing that gets lost in this argument, and I hope there'll be some sober minds at the Capitol that will actually be honest about the fact that we have been ground zero for mass incarceration, and that is absolutely an outgrowth of Jim Crow and an outgrowth of chattel slavery. But we found in my very first year, there was a man by the name of Jermaine Hudson. We were reviewing his case because he was convicted with a non-unanimous jury. Republicans and Democrats across the board said we need to come in line with the modern era. We need all 12 jurors to agree. We did that. And so we began reviewing the non-unanimous jury cases. And this individual, Jermaine Hudson, spent 22 years in jail and was about to plead guilty to a lesser crime to come home to his grown son. And the purported victim in his case called us from an inpatient facility to say that the crime never occurred. He actually lied about the crime occurring, but heard there was a DA that was willing to look, willing to check, and he came forward. He'd come forward in the past and had been sent away from other DA's offices of my predecessors who ignored him. But this man was about to plead guilty to a crime he didn't commit, to a crime that never even occurred. And that's just how real it is. Just when you talk about somebody coming close to death or someone willing to plead guilty to something they did not do just to see their son.
Right. And that's the thing right there that a lot of people don't quite understand. When you look at a criminal justice system, and we have seen and heard this all across the country, when they get presented with an option, somebody says, man, listen, if I got to plead to get 5 years, and these people are telling me they're going to put me away for 30, I'll go ahead and plead. I mean, we know of cases like this where the individual didn't do it, but they're making a determination saying, I can't get a break with this system, so I got to go ahead and plead. And then what happens is when the person didn't do it, what you're now dealing with, you're dealing with largely Republican lawmakers who will come back and say, hey, what's the problem? He pled. Well, there's a reason why he pled. They act like that stuff doesn't exist, like, oh, that's just television.
And the other thing is we could hit this from 2 different angles. There's a moral imperative here, but there's also a fiscal imperative here. We are spending money, taking care of men and women who should not be in jail, who could be taking care of their own families, who could be gainfully employed. This is debilitating the ability to invest in people to get better outcomes. Frederick Douglass said it a long time ago, we still refuse to hear it. It is easier and better to build strong boys and girls than to try to repair broken men and women. But a broken system is breaking people on purpose.
Well, and the thing for me is, do these people not realize what state they're in? We're talking about Louisiana is the mass incarceration capital of America.
Which means the mass incarceration capital of the world.
Yeah.
Because America incarcerates more people than any other place.
And so they also act like there haven't been people wrongfully prosecuted and imprisoned in Louisiana.
You know, and the thing that they want to try to label someone who cares about fairness as being soft on crime. I might be one of the only DAs in the country that's actually in court trying murder cases because I'm a litigator. But they're ignoring the number of cases in which we're going after the most violent offenders because they want to play this sort of partisan politics. This whole this Dirty Harry sense of go ahead, punk, make my day, cut corners and go after the bad guy. That might be nice for Hollywood. Might be nice for a movie, but that's how innocent people go to jail. And that's how cities go bankrupt, paying off lawsuits when the truth comes out.
Well, absolutely. So I would hope that these folks, actually, and here's my last one. This is what I don't understand. Weren't you elected?
By almost 60% of the vote, and I promised I would do this when I ran.
So you were elected by the citizens of New Orleans.
Correct.
But you've got individuals who are not elected by the citizens of New Orleans trying to tell the duly elected representative in New Orleans how to do his job. Are you questioning how they do their job in other parts of Louisiana?
You know, to my knowledge, it's the first time that a prosecutor, a duly elected prosecutor by the entire parish was brought before a Senate committee to be questioned about their policies and practices. My predecessor used the multiple bill, the habitual offender law, the 3 strikes and you're out. He used it almost 2,700 times in 1 year, when the next largest parish used it about 10 times, right? There was no questions when he was misusing the habitual offender law on folks for a couple of joints, for a chump amount of dope, for stealing an umbrella off someone's porch while it was raining. He was never questioned about his discretion when he was operating this way for nearly 14 years. But I have been questioned.
Oh, so he wasn't questioned, but you're being questioned.
Yeah.
Also, I take it that DA wasn't black.
He was not.
I figured that. All right. Keep us abreast of what happens down there.
Thank you, Roland. It's good to see you, man.
Yes, sir. I appreciate it. Thanks a bunch. Good luck. Matt, you have been waiting to weigh in. Go.
Well, look, I think you hit the nail on the head at the beginning. This is a part of the Republican playbook. And I'm glad you asked him about him being duly elected, because as I've said on the show many times, I represented our local DA for whom I had worked previously in actions to remove him. And all of this is political. None of it is really, truthful, obviously, and it's all ideological, but it's ideologically responsive. And I'm glad that he said that, nobody had a problem with this until the terms changed and soft on crime became synonymous with fairness. And I'm really glad that he said that, because at the same time that you see this, you see the intellectual dishonesty from primarily Republicans when they talk about the criminal justice system as it relates to Mr. Trump, right? So you can't talk out of both sides of your head. And what infuriates me about this is that this is what a DA's office should be doing. This is the task of the DA. In fact, in Texas, under the Code of Criminal Procedure, Article 2.01 says a district attorney's job is to seek justice. So this is an extension of that. If you are reviewing old cases and determining that prosecutors either cheated or outright lied, or there was some kind of malfeasance with the case. And I think that this becomes a big issue, because as much as people talk about wanting public safety and wanting to live in a safe community, when you disempower the DA's office to do the job that he or she is duly elected to do, then what you do is embolden their political opponents to decide to come at them and hamstring them whenever that's politically expedient. And we can't allow that as a society. Once you're elected, you're duly elected, you should be able to serve, particularly when one of the tasks that you have, the overriding task, is to seek justice. And here, the extension of that is to look at situations where experts, which is what Mr. Williams and the people in his office are, have determined that there was some impropriety that took place in the case. What should happen is a revisiting of that. So anyone who's opposed to this is intellectually dishonest, and it's about politics and nothing else. But I do think there needs to be a stronger institutional response from prosecutors groups like Fair and Just Prosecution and other organizations that empower, quote, progressive prosecutors, because if they don't have an institutional response, then the DA I represent, or the former DA, and others like him and others like Kim Gardner will be in this situation continuously, and we can't allow that as citizens.
Jelana, let's just be clear. Republicans, they only want to see hardcore right-wing, lock-em-up prosecutors. They think that those prosecutors are perfect. Nothing is wrong with their cases. These Republicans have no problem when DAs cross the line. They have no problem when these DAs withhold evidence. And when you look at cases, and if all y'all people out there who love talking about, oh, you just being a shield for the Democrats, you just sitting here just speaking up for the Democrats, if you show me I dare say, in the last 40 years, when you have a case where you have circumstantial evidence or where you have folks relying on an eyewitness or when you have questions regarding DNA, I will dare say 9.99 out of 10, you're going to have Democratic DAs or Democratic elected officials saying, let's stand up and get this thing right. And you're going to have Republicans, 10 out of 10, saying, damn that, it's good, move on. In fact, that was a Supreme Court ruling, I think it was Antonin Scalia, who literally said, even if that person is innocent, if they have exhausted all of their appeals and everything was done right, sorry. That's how crazy conservatives are on these type of issues, Yolanda.
Yeah, so you're right. And I know that D.A. Williams said something like, I hope there's sober minds in the Capitol. Well, there aren't going to be. They're in Louisiana. Let's face that. And here's what I see. And part of my law practice is criminal defense. And when I tell you that they hide evidence, and you are more likely to see under Democratic DAs, at least they'll allow us to go into that. And we have the opportunity to get rid of the prosecutors or strike evidence. And you didn't see that before. So I've been practicing law for 29 years. It's definitely different now. But what they do is they change the rules when black folks get in positions of power. Even say, for example, where they're now doing the Grand Inquisition over D.A. Williams to ask him how he does things. The DA's greatest tool is discretion. And it's normally not challenged. I'm going to say that one more again. The greatest tool is discretion. You'll see a little white kid do something, and they like literally committed a crime. The DA has the discretion to say, well, I'm going to go lock this kid up, or maybe I give them a scolding and I take them back to their parents and I say, hey, right? So they basically been scared straight. But DAs want to err on the side of locking us up. Here in Texas, for example, we had a whole bunch of black judges take office. Now they've gone and they've changed. The rules for what qualifies you to be a judge have been the same for 40 years. Once a whole bunch of black people got on the bench, they changed it and now have said, rather than having to practice law for 4 years, now you've got to practice for 8 years. And when we go back to session in January, they want to now make you board certified. So they're trying to make it more difficult for black people to be able to be in these positions.
Also first of all, you got to keep in mind, it used to be the system in the United States, I think it was in South Carolina, where you didn't need to go to law school to be a lawyer.
And that's true as well.
They literally, and when a black man became a lawyer, oh, hell no, we got to change the rules.
Oh, because that's what they do, right? That's just what they do. And so what's really scary is most of the laws for appeals, for whether you get a chance to go back to court or whether you exhaust your appeals, are in favor of believing whatever happened, even if it's unfair. Right? Even if somebody hid evidence from you, they're saying you should have known about it. So it makes it very difficult. It's extremely courageous and extremely different that we now have DAs that have conviction integrity units, because there are a whole bunch of non-guilt innocent reasons why people will plead guilty. You mentioned some of them at the beginning. I literally just had a case last year where I was ready to go to trial. No lawyer can promise a result, but I thought this was about as good a case as I could have had, and I expected to get an acquittal. So I prepared my client. We prepared the night before and the weekend before. We talked to the witnesses, and we were ready to go. The system is so unfair here that by the time we got to court the next morning, the mama had convinced the girl not to go to trial. She was like, the system is set up against you. And I was begging my client, please, 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 can we go to trial? I can't promise you a result. And she wanted to do a PTI instead of going to trial because her mother convinced her, you're not going to get a fair shot, despite my skill. So that happens all the time. And it's sad because once you plead guilty, for the most part, you're stuck with it for life.
So for all you maggots who are watching and y'all think that I'm lying, here's Matthew Perry, that brother in South Carolina I was telling y'all about. Watch this.
And up until this time, South Carolina had a practice by which it was known as the diploma privilege. If you had graduated from a law school in South Carolina, you didn't have to take the state bar examination. You were admitted under what became popularly known as the diploma privilege. Now, when the law school at South Carolina State was created, the officials decided, well, look, we've got to do something about this diploma privilege, and so they persuaded the legislature to enact a law requiring the passing of the bar examination by all law school graduates. And so I tell young people, anybody who has graduated since 1951, that if you had to take the bar examination, you can, of course, blame me. And up until...
There you go. Oh, and also for all you idiots, y'all saw what happens when you play a video from Twitter, how it jumps to the next video you don't know? Yeah, dumbasses. Michael, go to you. What they're doing there in Louisiana, this is what white Republicans do when black people get in power or when it's progressive. This is what they do. And they always talk about local control, local control. No, they only want local control when they are the ones who are in power.
Yeah, Roland, but it goes even beyond that. This is what white supremacists do when they are in power, regardless of political party. When in preparation for this segment, I read this piece from Fox 8 Live, and in reading it and watching I watched a segment where they had District Attorney Williams talking about the resentencing, and it sounded like this was going back to the 1898 Louisiana State Constitution. And on page 2 of this article, it talked about how several of the resentencing cases included the alleged misuse of a U.S. Supreme Court case on non-unanimous juries. And I've talked about this on this show before because in 1898, Louisiana rewrote their state constitution, and they imposed a 9-3 non-unanimous jury for felony convictions, and that was designed to target African Americans, to nullify any African Americans on a jury. So if you got convicted of a felony and it was 9 white people who said you did it and 3 black people who said you didn't, you were guilty. OK, and when he talked about you have octogenarians, you have people in their 80s that have been unjustly imprisoned, things like this. That goes back to understanding the devastation that Louisiana State Constitution did. Decades later, it changed to 10-2. It wasn't until 2018 that it was changed to a unanimous conviction. And that's because it was put on the ballot. So this is understanding the impact of law. OK, this is understanding the impact of policy. And the people who put this nonsense out here and say, oh, you're shilling for the Democrats. And I get that also. And I shut them down with facts and evidence because they don't understand history. They haven't read any of these state constitutions. They don't understand what happened after Reconstruction collapsed in 1877. We are dealing with the consequences of these state constitutions. And you still have these policies today. Everything they do to us, they use the law to do it. And then when they get caught breaking the law, they go hire an attorney at law to defend them in the court of law. So we must understand the law better than they understand the law so we don't keep getting caught up in this system like that.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.